So as Senator Chris said, we together started the Youth Initiative for Progress in Iraq just a little bit over a year ago now, about a year and a half ago, at our school in Hong Kong while we were both there together. This initiative aims to provide youth a voice and the tools necessary for sustainable relationships and development between our two countries, the United States and Iraq. So our first project that we did to launch this initiative was the 2008 Iraq-US conference in Amman, Jordan at King's Academy Boarding School. And here's a picture of the group of participants and facilitators at the closing ceremony.
Again, I'm Astrid. I'd like to thank all of you, especially the Meridian Center and Bridges of Understanding for bringing us here today. We're really excited to have the opportunity to speak about our initiative. I'm just going to talk a little bit about, Senator Chris already gave a good introduction and foundation for why we decided to start this initiative. It really came out of a discussion group that both of us were involved in and that Michael started on the campus to talk about development in Iraq and the situation at the time. And also from the conference that I had held with a few other students from United World College about the Kashmir conflict between Indians and Pakistanis. So, Michael?
Yeah, we had a number of hurdles to jump over to get the conference up and going, one of the largest being participant selection. So I'd just like to point out that the participants that we selected, we took great care to ensure that they were representative of as many different backgrounds and opinions that we could possibly have. So the American participants came from 14 different states. There were 16 Americans and 16 Iraqis. They came from 14 different states. They identified both as Republicans, Democrats, and independents. They were people of different faith. Likewise, the Iraqis came from all over Iraq, from Kurdistan, Baghdad, Basra, the entire spread of the country, as well as some refugees in Jordan. The facilitators of the conference were other United World College students who came from 8 different countries, including Venezuela, Pakistan, Canada, Australia, the United States, and Cyprus, were some of them.
This is just a picture of the first day of the conference, actually. We held the conference on the King's Academy boarding school campus, which is just outside of Amman. You can see it was rather a large group. We brought together 16 Americans and 16 Iraqis, ages 16 to 19. And on the right, you can just see an example of one of the team-building types of activities that we did within the first few days of the conference to really try and get them to break down the barriers, form friendships, and learn about each other's cultures, which is the first phase of the conference that we'll talk about now.
So the first phase of the conference, as she just said, had a number of different goals, the primary one being to foster friendships between the two groups of students. We also wanted each group of students to become more informed about the other group's opinions and their backgrounds. So every participant came prepared with a presentation to give at the beginning of the conference about some aspect of their nation's history, about their culture, about their faith. Examples of these from the United States were one participant gave a presentation about the Founding Fathers. So there were these different presentations which we held throughout the first couple of days of the conference as we had activities to bring the participants together and prepare them for later in the conference.
One thing that really helped us to bring the students together and give them another opportunity to form friendships and discuss things on a deeper level throughout the conference was buddy groups. And what they were was we split up pretty evenly, looking at Iraqi students, American students, different factions within the groups. And on a gender basis, we split up the students into 4 smaller groups led by 2 student facilitators that met every night for about half an hour to an hour to talk about and debrief the activities that went on throughout the day. They also, as you can see in the picture on the left, came up with, at the beginning of the conference, their goals and their hopes, values that they wanted to have for the community as they went through these discussions. during the conference. And this really gave the students an opportunity to get to know each other better, get into deeper conversations or raise questions that they thought of throughout the day, and really form friendships. A lot of them even wanted to continue talking and learning each other's languages. There was a lot of language exchange. A lot of the American students came away knowing a few words of Arabic, so that often happened in the buddy group setting. And this next slide just gives an example of the kinds of discussion groups that we had. When we formed the discussion groups for each different activity, it was really important to look at the gender balance. We had 7, I believe, Iraqi females and 9 Iraqi males, and the balance was about the same for the American group, which was really important. So we looked at their backgrounds in forming each of the discussion groups so that we could really get diversity in each of the small groups and really encourage them, by being in a smaller group setting, to voice their opinions.
To conclude the first part of the conference and steer the discussions more serious topics, we had an activity which we called the timeline activity. In this activity, we split the Americans and the Iraqis into 2 separate groups and asked them to list the 10 most important events that occurred in American-Iraqi relations, specifically related to the current conflict in Iraq. So this activity it did create tension and bring out tension both within the Iraqis, the Iraqi group, and the American group. And it was the first time that the different factions that were represented started to come into conflict with one another. After each group came up with their timeline, they gave the timeline to the other nationality, who would then comment on all the different events that were highlighted. So a lot of the comments, for instance, the timelines were entirely different, had no events that were the same. And when the Iraqis look at the American timeline, they would leave comments like, "This never happened. This isn't the truth. How could you say this?" And likewise, the Americans had not known about some of the events that the Iraqis pointed out. So we had a long discussion following this, where we kind of moved it brought out the opinions and the background and the contentious issues in the background of the conflict in Iraq. And then we steered the discussion forward from there and encouraged them to look forward to the future of relations between the 2 countries, recognizing the fact that they did come from these different backgrounds related to the conflict. And then to transition to the second stage of the conference, we had a much more relaxed setting and took a trip to Petra.